we are joined by two experts deeply engaged in international peace and relations. Professor Gilles Emmanuel Jaquet, the Vice President of the Geneva International Peace Research Institute, and from Cairo, Dr. Mohamed Osman, a specialist in international relations. Gentlemen, welcome to In Depth Together. They will help us unpack the consequences of Israel's occupation, the role of global powers and the path towards justice and peace. I'll start off with you, Monsieur Jaquet. Now, from Geneva's perspective, how does Israel's decision to occupy Gaza stand in light of established international law norms on occupation and territorial aggression? Monsieur Jaquet, I will repeat the question once more. Now, from Geneva's perspective, how does Israel's decision to occupy Gaza stand in light of established international law norms on occupation and territorial aggression?
Well, obviously, it contradicts international law, and it contradicts as well the relevant resolutions from the United Nations Security Council on this matter, like the Resolution 242 of 1967 and the Resolution 338 of 1973. And I could mention as well the outcomes of the Oslo process of 1993. And it's also contradicting most recent resolutions from both the UN Security Council or the UN General Assembly. So it's, let's say, perfectly illegal from the perspective of international law.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Osman, yesterday it was just Gaza City, but now it's the whole of Gaza. Now, strategically, what objectives might Israel be pursuing with a full occupation? Security, buffer, deterrence, leverage over Hamas, or something deeper?
Thank you for having me, Hani. Greetings to you, and always a pleasure to be with you. And of course, it's a pleasure to be also with Dr. Emmanuel Jaquet, who happened to teach me at the University in Geneva and was my thesis advisor. So truly, it is an honor to be in his company today on your respected show. Definitely, I think that Israel's aims in Gaza go way beyond the idea of occupation or the idea of demilitarizing Gaza or defeating Hamas or retrieving the remaining detainees and hostages. I think the true aims of the Israelis is the ultimate depopulation of Gaza as a part of a larger scheme to completely de-Palestinize. You know, this will be probably a new term that we will have to coin in political science very soon. Palestine, basically eliminate Palestinian existence in all of the lands of historical Palestine, whether it's the Gaza Strip, the West Bank at a later stage, and who knows, maybe even the Palestinians of 1948, 2 million Palestinians who carry an Israeli citizenship. So as we, from where things stand, it seems that the Israelis are conducting a military operation, a prolonged military operation over the past 21 months that aims to steadily eliminate and completely obliterate all the tenets and features of life in the Gaza Strip, leaving the people no other choice under such immense suffering and pressure but to elect attempting to leave the Gaza Strip. The Israelis are planning through their so-called quote-unquote humanitarian city that they are erecting in southern Gaza, which they seek to move the majority of Gaza's population to this very limited area, which is in the Muraj axis where the city of Rafah used to exist, which now it ceased to exist as they have wiped it completely off the map. Now they will attempt, and the Israelis did explicitly say that, to tempt them to voluntarily depart the Gaza Strip to third countries. There are very worrying reports that the Americans have been lobbying several countries in Africa and in Asia who reportedly expressed their willingness to accept quote-unquote refugees from Gaza. But of course, this will be tantamount to being complicit in an act of ethnic cleansing, which is in itself a component of the wider crime of genocide that is being committed in Gaza at the moment. I think now that the military operation is entering a final stage, unfortunately meaning that it will become even more brutal, we should expect more brutality and more manifestations of violence and mass killings in an attempt to terrorize the remaining 400 to 500,000 people remaining in the city of Gaza and other parts of northern Gaza, to move them to central and then southern Gaza. And it seems that the Israelis will start their operation by seizing what remains of the city of Gaza, which is the largest urban center in the Gaza Strip. And afterwards, they will move forward to occupy the Gaza Strip in its entirety. Mm-hmm. From where things stands, Israel now controls about 65%. I think they are going for a much bigger percentage than that now, Hani.
Dr. Jaquet, now, UN bodies have denounced the occupation, but what legal avenues can they realistically pursue to curb or reverse it, and will they be effective?
Let's be honest. There are, practically speaking, very few tools the UN can use. The United Nations Security Council includes the USA, and the USA till the very end will do everything they can to protect the interest of Israel. So let's not expect things coming from the UN Security Council right now. You have other maybe avenues, legal avenues, or more political tools to be used. Germany stopped sending weapons to Israel, for example, and other countries could do the same, could adopt sanctions or other similar measures. I mean, economic sanctions or travel bans over the members of the Israeli leadership. But when it comes once again to the UN Security Council, there are very few, let's say, avenues available. It's mainly between the hands of states if we want to look for a more practical solution.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Osman, how has Netanyahu's insistence on the term occupation or control reflected, blatantly reflected his political and strategic goals regarding Gaza?
I think Netanyahu, as usual, is trying to play with terms. He refuses to use the words occupation. He rather chooses to use other words like controlling the Gaza Strip, security control over the Gaza Strip, even going as far as saying we are liberating the Gaza Strip from Hamas, as preposterous as this might sound. However, this will not change the fact that Gaza, under international law, is part of the occupied Palestinian territories. And Israel withdrawing from the Gaza Strip in 2005, yes, the ground forces ceased to exercise control over the day-to-day life of the urban centers and the living spaces in Gaza, yet they maintained the entire border of the Gaza Strip were under their supervision one way or the other, and they are under the responsibility of the occupying power, which is Israel. So now when Israel chooses to redeploy its army with steel and blood and fire in the Gaza Strip by murdering tens of thousands in order to reassert full control over the Gaza Strip, that does not make them any less of an occupying power. They were already the occupying power of Gaza, and now they will. This status will be reinforced and reaffirmed by the physical existence, prolonged existence and deployment of the Israeli army of occupation inside Gaza. And of course, he's trying to play with these words because being an occupying power comes with responsibilities. The Geneva Convention strictly stipulates that you cannot displace the inhabitants of an occupied region. And this is exactly what Israel has been doing in the West Bank before, and what it intends and is attempting to do right now in the Gaza Strip in rather very brutal manners. So when he says we're not an occupying power, he's trying to exonerate himself from any future responsibility. Of course, this is preposterous. This is false, erroneous. He's lying. He is reoccupying Gaza, and even without reoccupying Gaza, even before the beginning of this war in October 2023, Israel was treated legally by the international community as the occupying power responsible for Gaza. So any playing with words at this point will not change this legal reality, this legal fact. However, Hani, we are faced with a very tough predicament here right now, that international law has become basically ineffective. International law has been negated of its value and of its efficiency as of late. Israel violates international law with impunity. and they don't care about it, they are eroding the foundations of the international system through their behavior. And the United States political cover and unconditional support for the Israelis is only emboldening them and eroding this international system further, and the international legal system further. So I don't think we should have any faith at this point in any international legal mechanisms having any effect on attempting to redirect the trajectory of events at this point.
Well, Dr. Jaquet, if international law is not as effective, now you've mentioned economic sanctions as a tool to be used. Now, how really realistically effective are economic and diplomatic sanctions as potential pressure tools against Israel in such heightened geopolitical contexts?
Let's be as well realistic here. When we talk about economic sanctions, there'll be, let's say, niche sanctions or sectorial sanctions. We're not talking about sanctions similar to the thousands of sanctions imposed against Russia. It's not going to be the same. Germany wants to ban weapons export. Other countries will do the same. But many European Union countries will continue to buy products from Israel or even from the territories illegally occupied by Israel, where you have settlers, and these settlers can produce goods like agricultural goods that are exported to Europe. And you have as well a strong, let's say, mechanisms in Israel to counter as well these sanctions. Like typically, it's you have several army generals that look at the activities of networks like the BDS, the boycott, disinvest, and the sanction movements, because they consider that it's a strategic priority and threat against Israel. And let's not be naive as well. Israel is able to exercise strong pressure over European governments. It has different networks it can use to do so. So we're not going to see sanctions similar to those used against Russia. And just to conclude on the more international legal aspect as well, one avenue could be the International Criminal Court. There are files being submitted to the court over the Israeli leadership, over some leaders of European governments, or even the European Union itself. But we know that there are strong pressure over the International Criminal Court from the US and from Israel with sanctions or travel bans or even blackmailing against judges. So this avenue as well is not the one from which we could expect, let's say, real tangible outcomes.
Dr. Osman, how has Netanyahu's approach to Gaza influenced his relationship with the Israeli military leadership, particularly regarding the Chief of Staff transitions, and what were the military's concerns and recommendations about his plans to occupy Gaza specifically? Why did Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir initially oppose it?
It's quite interesting, Hani. Eyal Zamir was Netanyahu's pick or choice as military chief of staff to succeed Herzi Halevi, whom he did not agree entirely with, and they just did not they did not rhyme together when it came to running the war on Gaza. And Eyal Zamir was known to be a hardliner who supported Netanyahu's worldview. However, it seems that Netanyahu is the problem. He refuses to give them clear war aims that they can establish or formulate their military strategies with regards to them, especially with regards to the idea of retrieving the detainees or the hostages. The Israelis supposedly prioritize this goal among all other goals in the war. It seems that this is not the case. It seems that this is far from the realities on the ground. As we have said before, Netanyahu seeks to basically destroy Gaza, reoccupy it, and depopulate it. And the far-right elements in his government do support this direction. The army chief has recognized that undertaking these actions with the detainees still in captivity in Gaza endangers their life. He would be basically sentencing 20 remaining hostages to death. And Eyal Zamir could be held legally accountable. He could be legally liable for the lives of those detainees if they die due to Israeli military action, especially that countless detainees already died in previous military operations, either in rescue attempts or due to the indiscriminate bombardment by the Israeli army of occupation. So this is the main obstacle that is obstructing any common understanding between the military top brass in Israel and Netanyahu. However, I think that this problem is overblown. It's way out of its actual proportions. I don't think that it will be detrimental to Netanyahu's war aims or his goals. If they reach a deadlock, Netanyahu will just fire Eyal Zamir, just like he fired Herzi Halevi, and will replace him by another general who will be willing to do the dirty work that Eyal Zamir did and Herzi Halevi refused to do in the second round of fighting in this war, if we remember. So I don't think that it is detrimental to Israel's efforts to reoccupy Gaza and basically destroy Palestinians' existence over there. However, it is very evident that Netanyahu's sinister aims could potentially come at the expense of the lives of the remaining detainees in Gaza.
Dr. Jaquet, now, how might this occupation impact Israel's relationships with its Western allies beyond the US? You've mentioned that the European countries wouldn't really have any sort of influence or be able to pressure Israel as much as a result of the different Israeli systems or different bodies or different means of Israeli influence on these European countries. So how will the relationship be affected as a result of this occupation?
Well, after a year and a half, we can see that some Western European governments are less and less at ease, less and less comfortable with what Israel is doing. France, for example, a year ago was, I'm not going to say supportive towards Mr. Netanyahu, but Mr. Netanyahu could send some other Israeli officials to France. There were some meetings. France was trying to not antagonize Israel. But now we heard Emmanuel Macron talking about the recognition of a Palestinian state, which in fact would be conditioned to, let's say, points that won't be acceptable by the Palestinians. But we see more generally Western European countries being less comfortable with what is going on there. We see Germany, as already said, stopping weapons export to Israel. But once again, I'm not sure let's say the measures some European countries could take over the next coming months would be enough to stop what is happening in Gaza. And I'm not sure European countries will be strong enough to oppose a long-term Israeli occupation and depopulation and ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza. It will be too late. And some countries like France are being proposed to take refugees, but we know very well that these refugees will never be able to come back to Gaza. And the USA, if we look now at the United States of America, well, nothing as well decisive or very positive is going to come from them. President Trump is a strong supporter of Israel. And if needed, the US will make some pressure in European countries if they are not cooperative enough with Israel. Let's say that if European countries or Western countries more generally wake up, change, want really to stop things, it will be too late. It's like, once again, what we can see now, Western European leaders expressing their strong concern over what is going on in Gaza. But it already started more than a year ago, a year and a half ago. So they knew very well what was going on, what was going to happen. So to conclude, I mean, when Europe may wake up and start to take some serious measures, it will be too late.
Well, Dr. Osman, the US definitely has the biggest influence on Israel. How does the US political and military support enable or embolden this occupation? And what leverage does Washington hold to moderate or halt it?
The United States is complicit in what's going on in Gaza. The United States is not only supporting Israel, they are taking part in the atrocities that are going on in Israel, not only by arming the Israelis, going on in Gaza, not only by arming the Israelis and supplying them with the weapons through which they destroyed over 80% of the infrastructure in Gaza and murdered tens of thousands, but also by providing the unconditional political cover, and also by setting up this very false and flawed humanitarian scheme under the auspices of the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that is basically was to replace the humanitarian aid distribution mechanism established and recognized by the United Nations and other international bodies. It was basically dismantled by the Israelis with the support of the Americans and replaced by this new mechanism that is causing the current famine in Gaza, which is killing hundreds of people and starving children to death. And the Americans are the Israelis in this regard. American mercenaries, former servicemen of the U.S. military, are employed by this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and they are in charge of distributing humanitarian aid and food to the starved population of Gaza. And in the process, they kill scores of Palestinians on a daily basis while attempting to access these distribution points. Those American mercenaries, and this is what they are mercenaries on behalf of the US government, because the Gaza Foundation is registered in the United States. They shoot point blank at civilians and kill them while they are attempting to get food and basic necessities. So as you can imagine, on over 1,000 Palestinian civilians have died in these heinous acts. So the United States is complicit. The United States greenlit, not only reportedly, according to both Israeli and American media, the United States has greenlit the occupation of Gaza City. They have greenlit the occupation of the entirety of the Gaza Strip. They have greenlit before and approved and adopted the idea of the displacement of the Palestinians from the lips of President Trump himself. And they also greenlit the idea of annexing parts of the Gaza Strip. They approved that. So you can imagine, Hani, how far the United States is implicated in this heinous genocidal crime going on in Gaza. So we should never count on the United States. We should never trust on the United States playing any positive role in this calculus, as they are co-culprits with the Israelis in what's transpiring on the ground in Gaza.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Jaquet, how do you assess the potential influence of the international law and UN resolutions on not just the political legitimacy of Israel's actions, but also the humanitarian catastrophe, famine, starvation, dubbed as war crimes?
Well, clearly, we have war crimes committed in Gaza by the IDF, also by the mercenaries used by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, just as explained by my colleague, Mr. Osman. And we have as well auxiliaries of these forces led by Mr. Abu Shabab, who are as well involved in war crimes. Now, when it comes to accountability, unfortunately, I think it will take a lot of time to arrest those who are responsible, because we're talking about IDF officers, Israeli politicians, or some of their proxies. So if we look at the International Criminal Court or similar international mechanisms, it will take time, and some countries like the US or others would be uncooperative. We have another maybe level we can consider is national jurisdiction. We have a lot of national legal systems and jurisdiction that can open cases on this matter, because they have, for example, universal competence, and especially against serious crimes under international law. We have, for example, cases where in some European countries or foreign countries around the world now, the custom officers control the papers and as well sometimes the content of the phones or the computers of former IDF servicemen to see if they participated in war crimes or any other types of crimes under international law. So there'll be more maybe pressure, countries taking action. That's a possibility, but I'm not sure that on the more international level a serious measure will be taken, and I'm concerned that we may once again assist to a humanitarian catastrophe and genocide, and we may take action once it will be too late. We have reports from British or French surgeons who worked on the field in Gaza in the last 2 years. We had as well reports from Doctors Without Borders, MSF, and the ICRC, and they are talking about ethnic cleansing. They are talking not just about incidents, they are talking about a whole systematic approach and plan. So nothing is left to coincidence.
Yes. Professor Emmanuel, Jaquet and Dr. Mohamed Osman, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your deep, urgent insights in these hard times.